joining me on the Path of the Seeker. Today we're taking a look at something I have been wondering about, but never really dived into. We have many more systems of 7 that are worthy of exploration. However, this is a small diversion, and it's timely given that it's Aries season, and our exploration starts with a tarot card that represents Aries. Plus, we have 13 moons in the zodiacal cycle this year. We have a blue moon, or 13th moon, coming up in August. Surprisingly, this happens about every 2.5 years or so when the nodes change. I never realized that was when the blue moons happened, and sometimes they are black moons, where there are 2 new moons in 1 month. Currently, as I write this, we are coming up to a second Aries new moon, which some have called a black moon in astrology. However, I've also seen black moons referred to as the second new moon in an actual solar month. And we experienced that instead of a blue moon the last time the nodes changed. In August of this year, however, we will have a blue moon. Each month, we will examine this system of 12 with an emphasis on alchemy and the hero's journey, although they should correspond with the symbols for our moon cycle as well. So we are going to be following a few things. We'll be examining the alchemy, the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the tarot cards that correspond with each month, and the Hebrew letter that corresponds to each tarot card. They should go rather smoothly with what we already do for our new moon symbolism, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start now, is because this will be in sync with what we've already been doing. It may be a little bit redundant, but I think that it's going to be very interesting, especially given that with alchemy in particular, the 12 stages of alchemy, as shared by Paul Foster Case, actually correspond to the zodiac. So, as we study the 12 steps of alchemy, we will actually get a better appreciation for what each of the 12 zodiacal signs actually mean throughout the year, and the process of alchemy that goes along with it. For example, when it comes to Aries, the process that is associated with it in alchemy is calcination. Now, calcination is my most popular YouTube video by far, and it is the process through which any product that we are trying to work with is reduced down to ash. I associate it with with the Tower card. I'm saying the Dark Tower, thinking of books. But what it really comes down to in alchemy is working with the mind. Similar to how in the Buddhist tradition they refer to the mind as a rock. In alchemy, it's the same thing. We look at the mind as a rock. We start off with lead, and then we go through a process where we expel the parts that we don't want. Now, I have a little twist on that in a way, but we'll get to that as we cover the different stages of alchemy that correspond to the 12 months. Fascinatingly, when you look at alchemy's symbols for the 12 stages, it is exactly the same symbols as the zodiac. So the sign for the first stage of calcination, an alternative to what I've shared in the 7 stages of alchemy, is the symbol that looks like a V almost for the zodiac sign of Aries. So I'm very excited for that aspect of this. But what's really even more interesting to me is the fact we're going to blend into it the 13 Indigenous Moons. And really that's what inspired this entire series to be done. I had been putting off going through the system of 12 for some time. I'd seen that it corresponded to the 12 months of the zodiacal year, but I never really connected it with the Indigenous Moons. And the Indigenous Moons actually start with the same period of time. They start with the start of the zodiacal year. And so I wanted to coordinate those two together. And then as I was examining it further, I decided to add the tarot cards. And then came, of course, the Hebrew letters. And I was fascinated to see how they fell into line. But that 13th moon, There's no stage in alchemy for that one. And I'll cover that and what that might mean later when we hit that 13th moon in August. I've actually written that talk already, and I'll probably record it soon, just because it's just a fascinating subject to me. And the reason why I wanted to blend in the hero's journey as well is because I've always seen the hero's journey as something that we do every year, just as the process of going through the 12 stages of alchemy every year is a bit repetitive, but it's the same journey. And once again, that goes back to the fact that the journey is a spiral. It's not that the hero goes out and goes on this grand adventure and then comes home and never leaves again. That's possible. But even in Lord of the Rings, you can look at the main character from The Hobbit, and he ends up going back out anyways, whether he likes it or not, because of Frodo. And that is the main one I usually think of when I think of a hero's journey. But of course, there's many, many others. And believe me, I'm a huge nerd, so I've read a lot of fantasy and science fiction novels, and I've even written my own. So I will be pushing back the science and magic videos that I was planning on doing. That's because I'm in the middle of reading a bunch of books. I currently have like 6 books that I have partially read, and I want to start completing them instead of speed reading through the books on color and the books on aromatherapy, both of which are fantastic, and I've had so much fun learning about color. But I wanted to get back to doing the system of 12 because I sat down and I drew this crazy diagram, which I put up in as a slide. And then I decided to go ahead and add in the tarot cards in order according to what they are based on the actual Aries season, the zodiacal season. There's a tarot card for each one. And like I said, we usually use that every new moon. We use whatever the one that corresponds to the new moon's cycle. So it will be very interesting to see how the actual moons that we experience correspond with the tarot cards for the actual zodiacal season. And so in a way, this is going to be very much tied to each season, as well as the animal medicine cards by Jamie Sams that I will be pulling for every season. It will be definitely a deep dive because, like I said, we're going to be covering a bunch of different systems. There's only, when it comes to the system of 12, unlike the system of 7, there's only those ones that I'm covering now that go with it. And they are mostly just in tune with the different signs of the zodiac. Now, normally the system of 7 corresponds to the chakra system. And so that's the main difference between this. So what D.W. Huck shared and what I kind of synchronized when I did my alchemy videos, when I worked with what Paul Foster Case said and what Huck said, that would correspond to the 7 chakra system. In fact, there's a quote out there by Edgar Cayce that said any time that you come across a 7-part system, it inevitably has to do with the chakra system. Even if you look at the 12 gates in Catholicism, that's a chakra system. You've got the 7 rays, both of which are things that I do intend to cover because I've read books on those and I've actually written things on those, but those will come in following years. This year, I'm mostly focusing on the system of 12, and we'll actually go back and finish the 7 system for the medicine wheel. Because when it comes to the 13 Indigenous Moons, they are plotted on the medicine wheel. And hopefully right now as you're watching this, you're seeing a slide that depicts that. And so I'm very excited to cover all of this, to synchronize all the different symbols and meditate on them with you. Unfortunately, this also means that we'll be waiting until next year to dive into the tarot cards, which is something else that I want to do on this channel and that I've been doing in my blogs. So this is more for the people who read my blogs than it is for those of you on YouTube. But I was going to carry that on to here as well. But I will be getting into that next year. The system of 12 is simply faster to get into, even though it will take a year, than all of the tarot cards, which I will be going into the symbolism in depth and explaining what the old-fashioned, I guess it wouldn't be original, but more of the original point of view on them than the modern, and comparing and contrasting those. Now, when I look at the system of 12 and you look at this crazy diagram that I shared, what's really obvious to me is that this is the common path. This is the path that most people tread. It would be the wide road that is referred to. And I think that's the difference between this and the 7 paths that we usually cover, is that those are rare. It's rare that people work through those. That would be considered the work. And the 12 is what we typically go through, which might surprise some since it is not exactly what you'd consider the average journey, since it is the hero's journey. But the truth is, in our average everyday life, it is a hero's journey. We face impossible obstacles all the time. We face trauma. We face challenges. I mean, I don't know anyone who's been in a customer service situation where there's like a 20 deep person line who hasn't been challenged, or someone who went for a job interview that they didn't think they could possibly land who wasn't challenged. That's just part of our journey, and facing that challenge and overcoming it is in itself facing the adversary, which is a part of the hero's journey. It's facing the dragon. And I have a really interesting aside about that we'll get to later. I've made a lot of different connections. It's going to be a very fun journey. And so I just wanted to thank you for joining me in this process of discovery. I wanted to introduce it this way to explain why I'm not doing the science of magic first, or explaining to my blog fans why I'm not going to continue that. It's because I'm going to be investigating this. There's 4 or 5 books involved, and I'll be reading at least a chapter every month. And then adding on top of that, the fact that we're going to cover the different directions of the medicine wheel, which is not as complicated for me anymore because I've used that system so often and I've meditated on it so often that at this point I pretty much have it memorized. But I want to give you the awesome quotes that is part of my style, because I love including quotes from the experts and the people who wrote the books that inspired me to step onto this path, such as Jamie Sams and Paul Foster Case and Edgar Casey. So many wonderful people. So I just wanted to conclude this by saying thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here and tuning into this channel. Thank you for checking out these extraordinarily nerdy videos where we check out all these awesome symbols and symbolism in general. Hopefully all of us will gain something from going over this journey of the 12 system and exploring this avenue. Bye for now.